Welcome back to StadiumRise. On one side, $5.5 billion, opened in 2020. A translucent roof that floods the field with natural California sunlight. A 360-degree video board so large it disorients first-time visitors. The most expensive building ever constructed for sport. The architectural statement of the 21st century. On the other side, $75 million in renovation. Opened in 1966. Built from concrete that has cracked, shifted, and been monitored by NASA for structural concerns. Open to the sky, the rain, and the altitude of Mexico City, 7,200 feet above sea level. A building that watched Pelé lift the World Cup, that witnessed Maradona punch the ball into the net with his fist and then score the greatest individual goal in the history of the sport. On the same afternoon, 4 minutes apart, on the same pitch, these two stadiums, SoFi Stadium in Inglewood, California, and Estadio Azteca in Mexico City, represent the complete spectrum of what football venues can be. One built on money, one built on memory, one designed by architects who had never built anything like it before. One designed by architects who studied stadiums across 5 continents and blended Spanish, English, French, Italian, and native Mexican influences into their design. And at the 2026 FIFA World Cup, one of them has been called the best stadium on earth by the people who covered it. The other has been called the most problematic venue in the tournament. The answer when it arrives is not the one you expect. Today, we go inside both of them and we tell you exactly what happened. Begin with the money. Because the money is the most obvious place to start and the most misleading place to end, SoFi Stadium cost $5.5 billion to build. That figure, repeated so often it has become a shorthand for excess, represents the single largest private investment in sports infrastructure in human history. Stan Kroenke, the billionaire owner of the Los Angeles Rams and Arsenal Football Club, among several other franchises, funded the project entirely from private sources. No public subsidy, no government bonds, no taxpayer contribution. $5.5 billion of private capital invested in a stadium that would serve the Rams, the Chargers, and every major entertainment event that could be attracted to a venue of this scale in the world's second largest entertainment market. The result, when it opened in September 2020, was genuinely unlike anything that had existed before. A translucent ETFE roof, not a dome, not a retractable covering, but a fixed canopy that stretches across the entire building without touching the sides, creates an indoor-outdoor environment that lets natural light reach the playing surface while keeping fans sheltered from rain. The sides of the stadium are open, the concourses face outward toward the California landscape, with palm trees visible from the interior and a lake constructed in the surrounding entertainment complex. The video board, a double-sided, oval screen hanging above the center of the field, stretches 70,000 square feet and represents the most technically advanced piece of stadium display technology ever installed in any venue on Earth. This is what $5.5 billion looks like when it is done right. And it is extraordinary. Now the World Cup arrived, and the gap between what SoFi Stadium is and what the World Cup needed became visible in a way that no amount of money could close. The pitch was too narrow. SoFi Stadium was built for the NFL. The internal width of its seating bowl, the distance between the field-level seats on each side of the playing surface, does not accommodate FIFA's required pitch dimensions without removing lower bowl seating. The seats that had to come out reduced SoFi's World Cup capacity to approximately 61,500, the smallest of any American venue in the tournament. The most expensive stadium on Earth delivered the smallest American crowd at the 2026 World Cup. 5 levels of seating, not including suites, meant that the crowd was spread across too many tiers for the noise to concentrate at pitch level. The rake of the stands was too shallow. The upper tiers sat too far back. A journalist who covered 10 matches at SoFi during the tournament wrote that the building was great for everything except watching the game and holding energy. The translucent roof, which does not seal the sides, means that crowd noise escapes before it can build into the wall of sound that enclosed stadiums produce. SoFi Stadium, for all its technological and architectural achievement, was not designed to hold a football atmosphere. And then there were the problems that had nothing to do with architecture at all. The workers' strike, the immigration enforcement fears, the empty seats at certain group stage matches. The revenue dispute with FIFA that nearly removed the building from the tournament before it had hosted a single match. SoFi Stadium cost more than every other venue in this World Cup, and it delivered, in certain matches, an atmosphere that fell short of venues that cost a fraction of its price. Now cross the Pacific, cross the continent, fly to Mexico City. Take the Xochimilco light rail from Tasqueña Station, a metro connection that sits in the shadow of the stadium's Colossus of Santa Ursula nickname, and arrive at Estadio Azteca Station. Walk through the turnstiles and understand immediately that you are somewhere different from anywhere else. Estadio Azteca opened on May 29, 1966. Architects Pedro Ramirez Vasquez and Rafael Mijares Alcereca spent years designing it, studying stadiums across Spain, England, France, Italy, and Mexico before blending all of those influences into a concrete structure that would seat over 107,000 people on a site in the Coyoacan district of southern Mexico City. It was ambitious by any standard of its era. It remains the largest stadium in Latin America today, 60 years after it opened. No new stadium built anywhere in the Western Hemisphere has exceeded its original capacity. The building predates the Beatles' final studio album. It was already 10 years old when Johan Cruyff played his last World Cup in Argentina. The renovation for 2026 cost approximately 2 billion Mexican pesos, roughly $110 million at current exchange rates. That is 75 million more dollars than the original construction cost in today's equivalent. What it bought was significant. New LED screens throughout the building, restored facade, new dressing rooms, a rebuilt players' tunnel, replaced seats throughout the bowl, and a hybrid grass pitch, the Grassmaster system, natural grass reinforced with synthetic fibers that replaced the surface that had been criticized in previous years. The reopening, on March 28, 2026, a friendly between Mexico and Portugal, was not without controversy. The Athletic criticized uneven concrete work and unfinished furnishings, a security queue described as chaotic, frustrated supporters, and then, in May 2026, 5 weeks before the World Cup opened, NASA was called in. The agency was asked to monitor the structural stability of the building amid concerns about ground subsidence beneath the foundations. A stadium built in 1966 on the volcanic soil of Mexico City in a seismic zone of significant activity, hosting its third World Cup while scientists monitored whether the ground beneath it was moving. Only the Azteca, only this building, only this city. The opening match arrived on June 11. Mexico versus South Africa, 87,000 people. Julian Quiñones scoring in the 9th minute, the first goal of the entire World Cup, and the first time a player from a CONCACAF nation had scored the opening goal of a World Cup edition. Pyrotechnics at kickoff. A wall of noise that journalists in the press box described as physically overwhelming, the dead air that had afflicted this stadium through 10 years of gradual decline, when the lower bowl had been partially closed, when the energy had drained, was gone. The renovation had worked. The lower bowl was whole again, the crowd was in every seat, and the atmosphere that the Azteca had always been capable of producing, the one that made Pele's Brazil play at a higher level that gave Maradona his stage, was back. One journalist who had covered football across 4 continents wrote, after the opening match, "This is not just the best stadium at this World Cup. It might be the best stadium in the entire world. The contrast with SoFi Stadium could not have been more complete. $5.5 billion, 5 levels of seating, the most expensive video board ever installed, and a building that journalists described as difficult to generate noise in. $75 million in renovation, 60 years of cracked concrete, NASA monitoring the foundations, and a building that produced the most overwhelming atmosphere of the entire tournament on the first night it was used. What explains this? Why does a 60-year-old stadium beat a 6-year-old one for atmosphere? The answer is architectural, and it is simple when you understand it. The Azteca is a single-tiered bowl. 2 tiers, not 5. The upper tier wraps close to the lower tier, bringing the crowd together vertically rather than spreading it across 5 separate levels. The open roof, which at SoFi allows noise to escape, at the Azteca creates a different dynamic. The concrete walls of the bowl trap sound horizontally before it can escape upward. The steep rake of the stands, particularly in the lower tier, puts fans close to the pitch in a way that SoFi's shallow rake does not. And the 87,000 people at the Azteca, in a sealed concrete bowl with no luxury of isolation, generate a collective noise that has nowhere to go except inward. SoFi Stadium was designed for comfort, for premium experience, for technology. The Azteca was designed for football. And in 2026, at the World Cup, the difference between those two design philosophies became the defining story of the tournament's most high-profile venue comparison. This is not a simple story about old being better than new, or cheap being better than expensive. The Azteca has serious problems, structural concerns, unfinished renovation work, logistical chaos that SoFi Stadium does not share, and SoFi Stadium, when it was genuinely full for the Argentina versus Norway quarterfinal, produced an atmosphere that reminded everyone how extraordinary a building it can be when the conditions are right. The story is about what each building was designed to optimize. SoFi optimizes the individual experience, the technology, the premium seat, the visual spectacle, the social media moment. The Azteca optimizes the collective experience, the noise, the crowd, the sense of being part of something that cannot be replicated anywhere else on Earth. At the World Cup, the most collective sporting event in human history, the Azteca won $5.5 billion versus $75 million in renovation. 6 years old versus 60 years old, California sun versus Mexico City altitude, translucent roof versus open sky, 5 tiers versus 2, shallow rake versus steep bowl, and the 60-year-old concrete cathedral in Mexico City, monitored by NASA, unfinished in its corners, cracked in its foundations, standing in the volcanic soil of a seismically active megacity, produced the best atmosphere of the 2026 FIFA World Cup. This is what the Azteca is. This is what money cannot buy. And this specific thing, this sound, this atmosphere, this collective human noise in a 60-year-old bowl is why football builds its greatest memories in the places that were designed for exactly this. If you enjoyed this, like, subscribe, and hit the bell. See you next week.